Part 1. They say marriage is work. Nobody warns you that sometimes the hardest job in the world is pretending everything's fine when your gut is screaming that it's not. My name is Eric. I'm 37 years old, living in Northern Virginia, and until recently, I thought I had life figured out. I'm an IT systems analyst, which basically means I spend my days fixing things. Networks, broken code, poor architecture decisions made by guys who got promoted too fast. I like structure. I like logic. I like knowing that when you do X, you get Y. Simple, clean, predictable. Jessica, my wife, was anything but predictable. We met 9 years ago at a mutual friend's New Year's Eve party. She was loud, bold, the kind of woman who could make a whole room laugh without even trying. I was the quiet one, the guy near the drinks table, laughing too hard at everyone's jokes. She said I had kind eyes, that I looked like someone who'd never cheat. I told her she looked like trouble. She grinned and said, "Only the good kind." I fell hard for her. We got married 3 years later. No kids, not by accident, but by decision. Careers came first, adventure second. We traveled a lot. We hiked the Andes, spent 2 weeks in Kyoto, wandered through old streets, ate strange food, and made up stories about the people we saw in the markets. We were partners, teammates. At least, that's what I believed. For a while, I thought we had it all figured out. But cracks started to show. You never see them at first, just small things, like hairline fractures in glass. But over time, the little things become too hard to ignore. It started on a random Thursday, after one of her girls' nights out. Jessica came home late, really late. Not just tipsy. She was drunk, slurring, stumbling, practically crawling through the door. I helped her to bed, took off her heels, grabbed a glass of water. She stared up at me like she didn't even recognize me. "You're so good to me," she said, her words thick, giggling like she was telling a secret. "I don't deserve you." At the time, I just smiled. I thought she was being silly, sentimental, maybe even a little bit sweet. But now, looking back, I think she meant it in a way I didn't understand. After that, she started going out more, always with the girls. Sometimes they were celebrating someone's promotion, someone's birthday, someone's divorce. There always seemed to be a reason. At first, I didn't question it. I believed her. I wanted to believe her. We'd built a life on trust, on being equals, on honesty. But the pattern kept repeating. She'd come home late, sometimes not at all until the sun was nearly up. Sometimes she'd be sober, sometimes she'd be giddy and drunk, collapsing into bed without even changing her clothes. I'd ask how her night was, and she'd shrug it off. Fun. You know, girl stuff. She'd smell like vodka and perfume, and something else I couldn't quite place. Something sharp, unfamiliar. I tried not to let it bother me. I tried to be understanding, supportive, the kind of husband who gives his wife space, who trusts her. But late at night, when I was alone in our bed, I'd stare at the ceiling and wonder if I was missing something obvious. Some nights, I'd replay old conversations in my head, searching for signs I'd overlooked. Jessica's phone started buzzing more often, sometimes late at night. She'd laugh at texts, then tuck her phone under a pillow or disappear into the bathroom for half an hour. I told myself it was nothing, that we were fine, that she'd never cheat. She'd said so herself, that first night. But the unease wouldn't go away. I tried to distract myself with work. I took extra hours, brought home more projects, told myself I was just being paranoid. But no matter how much logic I applied, the numbers didn't add up. The more I tried to fix things, the more it felt like I was just rearranging deck chairs on a sinking ship. It's strange how you can spend years building something, brick by brick, day by day, only to watch it crumble in slow motion. That's how it felt. Like the ground was shifting beneath my feet, and no amount of logic or analysis could keep it from cracking wide open. I started noticing little things. Jessica buying new clothes I'd never seen before, coming home with expensive perfume, new shoes, unfamiliar jewelry. She'd get mysterious calls and step outside to answer them, saying it was just a friend from work or her mom. She started talking less, pulling away from our little routines. I'd make dinner. She'd eat in silence, scrolling through her phone. I'd ask how her day was, and she'd mumble something, barely looking up. The distance grew, inch by inch. And all the while, I kept pretending everything was fine. Nobody tells you that marriage can feel like holding your breath underwater, waiting to see if you'll ever get to come up for air. For the first time, I was scared. Not of losing Jessica, but of losing the life we'd built. Of losing myself in the process. And so, I kept going. Fixing things at work, coming home to a house that felt colder each night, waiting for the cracks to finally break through the surface. I didn't know it then, but everything was about to change. I just didn't realize how fast. Part 2. The thing about denial is, it's comfortable. Like a warm blanket you wrap around yourself, even when you know it's suffocating you. I tried to convince myself that Jessica was just blowing off steam, that her wild streak was temporary. Maybe everyone goes through rough patches, maybe this was ours. But little things started to stack up. One night, around 2 in the morning, I woke up to the sound of Jessica whispering on the phone in the hallway. The apartment was silent except for her voice, hushed and urgent. When she noticed me standing in the doorway, she startled, quickly ending the call. "Work thing," she said, forcing a yawn. "Sorry, didn't mean to wake you." She slipped back into bed, turning away from me. Her body felt cold. After that, I started noticing more details. Passwords on her phone. Notifications turned off. The way she'd angle her screen away from me if I walked by. Once, I caught a glimpse of a contact name I didn't recognize, just an initial and a heart emoji. I told myself I wouldn't snoop. I wasn't that kind of husband. Trust mattered. But the unease kept growing, gnawing at me while I tried to focus on my work, on anything else. Our conversations got shorter. She seemed distracted, distant, her laugh growing rarer and her temper quicker. We'd sit on the couch together but feel like strangers, each on opposite ends, scrolling through our own feeds, barely exchanging words. The silence was suffocating. I started taking longer routes home, hoping that time would fix things, that maybe space would give us room to breathe. But every night the house felt emptier. The air between us was heavy, full of things unsaid. One Saturday, Jessica left early for what she said was a spa day with friends. I cleaned the kitchen, folded laundry, tried to keep busy. I wasn't looking for anything when I picked up her jacket from the floor and noticed a hotel keycard in the pocket, a place downtown we'd never visited together. For a long minute, I just stood there, keycard in hand, my mind racing. All the late nights, the silences, the secret smiles at her phone, they all lined up, painting a picture I didn't want to see. When she got home, I didn't mention it. I put the card back where I found it. Maybe I was afraid of the truth, or maybe I just needed time to figure out what to do. That night, she curled up next to me, her breathing slow and even, as if nothing was wrong. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of secrets pressing down. The next week, I tried to talk to her, to reach for what we used to have. "Do you want to go away for a weekend?" "Just us?" I asked, my voice sounding thin. She smiled, but there was something tired in her eyes. "Maybe. Work's busy right now. Let's see." Another brush off. Another evening spent apart, together. The next Friday, I left work early and drove downtown, parking near the hotel whose name was on the keycard. I waited in the lobby, pretending to check my phone, nerves jangling every time the elevator doors slid open. After an hour, I saw her, Jessica, my wife, in a dress I'd never seen, her hairstyle just so. She was laughing at something a man beside her said, touching his arm lightly, the way she used to touch mine. My world shrank to a pinpoint. I waited until they disappeared down the street before I let myself move. Hands shaking, I drove home, the silence in the car screaming at me. I wanted to call her, demand an explanation, but the words wouldn't come. All the logic in the world couldn't save me now. That night, she came home late again, her cheeks flushed. She kissed me on the cheek, whispered that she was exhausted, and went straight to bed. I sat in the living room, staring at the dark, feeling the bottom drop out of my life. I started noticing more signs, receipts for dinners she never mentioned, unfamiliar cologne lingering on her scarf, the way she hummed to herself after certain nights out. Each clue chipped away at the picture I'd painted of our marriage, revealing something ugly underneath. But still, I did nothing. I was paralyzed by love, by fear, by the hope that maybe I was wrong. Maybe it was all in my head. I tried to focus on the facts, the way I did at work. I made a list, dates, times, small inconsistencies. But every time I thought about confronting her, my heart would pound and my stomach would twist. What if she admitted it? What if it was worse than I thought? One night, I couldn't take it anymore. I waited until she was asleep, then picked up her phone from the bedside table. My hands trembled as I entered the code, her birthday, the one she'd always used. Messages. Dozens of them. Some innocent, some not. Pictures, inside jokes, plans. I scrolled, numb, barely breathing. My world broke open. I sat on the edge of the bed, phone in hand, staring at Jessica's sleeping form. The woman I loved, the woman I thought I knew, felt a million miles away. I didn't sleep that night. I watched the sky lighten, feeling the last threads of denial snap one by one. By morning, I'd made a decision. I couldn't keep pretending. Not anymore. Part 3. You always think you'll explode when you find out. That you'll shout, break things, rage until your throat goes raw, and make the walls rattle with the sound of your pain. But the truth? When I finally knew, really knew, I didn't even raise my voice. I froze. It started with a choice I swore I'd never make, hiring a private investigator. I held out for weeks after I found that hotel keycard, clinging to whatever scraps of hope or denial I could find. But I needed confirmation, cold, undeniable facts. Something that left no room for what-ifs. The PI's name was Holden. Ex-cop. Buzz cut, rough hands, didn't sugarcoat a damn thing. Said he'd have something in a week, maybe 2. He had it in 4 days. I remember every detail of that day. It was a Thursday. Gray clouds pressing low, rain hammering the roof like a warning. I was home alone when the envelope slid through the mail slot. No return address, just my name, Eric Wilson, written in thick black ink. Inside, photos. I didn't open it right away. Just stood in the kitchen, envelope in hand, already knowing what I'd see and desperately wishing to be wrong. But you can't run from the truth forever. Eventually, I sat down. And I looked. First photo, Jessica, outside a coffee shop. Smiling, laughing, her hand on a man's arm. Not just any man, the same one from the hotel keycard. Early 40s, square jaw, expensive suit, confidence in his eyes. Next photo, them again, his hand on her lower back as they entered the same hotel whose card I found. Not a quick visit. Hours later, they exited. Jessica's hair mussed, her lipstick faded, his tie loose. She kissed him on the cheek before they parted. 6 photos in all. Different days. Always the same man. Always the same hotel. It wasn't a fling. It was routine. The kind of routine you build when you've already set fire to the bridges behind you. I sat there for a long time, photos in my lap, hands shaking, breath shallow. No tears. No screaming. Just silence, so thick it felt like the world had stopped. She thought I'd put up with cheating because I'd put up with so much already. Maybe she thought I'd play the fool, the loyal husband who'd do anything to keep his marriage afloat. But not this time. I grew up in a house where my mother looked the other way at my father's late nights and his business trips. I watched her patch up the cracks with forced smiles and excuses, saying it was for the kids, that people make mistakes. She never left. She told herself love was forgiveness. I told myself love was trust. Not anymore. Not after this. The next day, I scheduled a counseling session. I didn't tell Jessica. Just said I had to work late. The therapist, Dr. Patel, was calm, direct, sharp but kind. In our first meeting, she asked what I wanted out of therapy. Peace, I said. Or maybe just the strength to do what comes next. She nodded. Do you plan to confront her? Not yet, I said. I'm still putting things in place. In place for what? I shrugged. A life without her. The week after, I started moving in silence. I opened a new bank account. Moved my salary. Canceled our joint streaming subscriptions. Looked up divorce attorneys on my lunch break. I met with one, Ms. Olson. She was efficient, no nonsense. I laid out the evidence. She looked at the photos, nodded, said, "You'll have a clean break. No kids, no debt. This won't take long." That was the first thing that felt hopeful in months. Jessica didn't notice. Or maybe she just didn't care. She smiled more around her phone than she did at me. She didn't see the changes, the emotional withdrawal, the silence where my old questions used to be. I was careful, meticulous. I tracked our expenses, set aside what was mine, made copies of every document I could find. At night, I'd lie awake and listen to the rain, making lists in my head of everything I needed to reclaim before I walked away. I didn't want confrontation. I wanted closure. But the anger simmered under the surface, hot and controlled. Every lie she told about where she was, who she saw, why she was late, became fuel. But I wouldn't let her see me burn. One night, we sat across from each other at dinner. She chatted about her day, about her new client. I already knew the truth. Holden's report had names, dates, addresses. There was no client, just more lies stacked on top of each other. I looked at her and felt nothing. No hate, no love, just absence. An empty seat where my wife used to be. When she asked why I was so quiet, I smiled. Just tired, I said. After dinner, she drifted upstairs, humming, her phone pressed to her ear. I washed dishes in silence, staring out the window at the streetlights blurring in the rain. I didn't say a word that night. Not to her. Not to anyone. But inside, a storm was gathering. I wasn't going to scream or beg for answers. I was going to do the thing she'd never expect. I was going to leave. Not quietly, but with every piece of truth ready, every step calculated. And I wouldn't raise my voice once. Part 4. The thing about revenge is that it isn't about rage. Rage is loud, sloppy, wild, easy to spot, easy to deflect. Real revenge? It's about patience, precision, timing. It's watching the person who thought they were holding the knife slowly realize they're the one bleeding out, and by the time they see the wound, it's too late. Jessica didn't just cheat. That would have been simple, maybe even clean, in its own brutal way. No, she did something far worse. She used me. I found out 2 weeks after the photos landed on my kitchen table. I was sitting in my lawyer's office. Her name was Jane. By then, we'd laid out the blueprint for divorce. Quiet, professional, no drama, no kids to fight over. Jane was sharp, careful, the kind of person who never let details slip by. She was double-checking the paperwork when she paused, her eyes narrowing at something on her tablet. Before we finalize, Jane said, turning the screen toward me, there's something odd I want you to look at. On the screen, a list of business filings. My name on a company I'd never heard of. E&J Creative Concepts, LLC. Filed 6 months ago. Registered using our home address. The contact email? A Gmail I'd never seen. But the initials E&J, Eric, and Jessica. Except I was never involved. Jane tapped into the financials. Business loans. Credit lines. Over $80,000. She'd used my name, my social, forged my digital signature. She'd taken out loans, maxed out business credit cards, all behind my back. She's committing fraud, I said, the words coming out flat. Unreal. Jane nodded. Identity theft. Wire fraud. If you don't act now, you could be liable for everything. My heart felt like concrete. Every beat a slow, cold thud. This wasn't just emotional betrayal anymore. This was criminal. It was a calculated, razor-sharp kind of betrayal. Strategy replaced grief. Right then, I decided walking away wasn't enough. I wouldn't just let her burn my life down and walk away whistling. I'd make sure she watched everything she'd built turn to ash. For the next 2 weeks, I played my part. The forgiving, supportive husband. I brought Jessica coffee in bed. I listened to her stories, smiled at her jokes, acted like I was finally moving on from my paranoia. She had no idea that every day I was quietly gathering evidence, that I'd hired a forensic accountant and a cybersecurity expert to track every wire transfer, every fake signature, every dollar moved out of our accounts. I even agreed to throw her a client appreciation party in our backyard, a mixer for her design business. The event she'd dreamed about but never gotten around to planning. She invited her clients, old and new, a few local influencers, friends who never missed a chance to show off for social media. It was perfect. The night was picture-perfect suburbia. String lights, catered food, wine glasses clinking, shallow laughs drifting on the breeze. At the height of the evening, after dessert, I tapped my glass for attention. Thank you all for coming, I said, voice steady, calm. I want to take a second to recognize Jessica for her creativity, her drive, her passion. She's built something incredible, hasn't she? She beamed at me, wine glass in hand, completely unsuspecting. And tonight, I want to let you all know that this will be Jessica's last event as a business owner, at least, legally. You could feel the mood shift. The laughter faded. I started. Jessica used my identity to take out over $80,000 in business loans. She forged my signature, registered a company in my name, and secured credit cards I never knew existed. Legal action is already underway, civil and criminal. And I wanted everyone here, clients and friends, to hear it directly from me. Silence. Not a breath. Jessica's face drained of color. Her hand trembled. She tried to speak, but nothing came out. Somebody gasped. A few people backed away. The truth always lands like a bomb in a room full of secrets. I set a folder on the table, copies of every document. If anyone needs proof, it's all right here. She dropped her wine glass. It shattered on the patio. The sound was sharp, final. Why are you doing this? She whispered, her voice ragged. I leaned in, low enough that only she could hear. Because you gambled with my life. With my name. And you never thought you'd lose. I left her standing there, alone in a crowd that suddenly saw her for who she really was. The next morning, Jane served her the lawsuit. Her business accounts were frozen. The authorities began their investigation. A week later, news spread. Some former client posted a cease and desist letter online. Comments exploded. Her reputation scorched in hours. Clients pulled out. Collaborators went silent. Friends stopped returning her calls. Jessica tried to reach me. Called. Texted. Emailed. Left voicemails that grew more frantic, more desperate. I never picked up. I didn't need her apologies. There weren't any, just panic, just fear, just the cold realization that the game was over. She thought I'd disappear quietly, like every other man she'd broken before. But I wasn't going anywhere. I was done bending. I was rebuilding, brick by brick, from the ashes she left behind. Part 5. There's a certain silence that follows a detonation. The kind that hums inside your chest long after the dust has settled. I lived in that silence for weeks after the papers were served, after Jessica's world shattered in front of her curated friends and carefully selected clients. I didn't celebrate. I didn't party. I breathed. For the first time in years, I actually heard myself breathe. I kept going to therapy. Dr. Patel said I had a calm rage, which sounded like an oxymoron until I realized how true it was. I wasn't screaming into the void or punching walls. I was just done. Done with the lies, the pretending, the way I'd folded myself into smaller and smaller shapes so Jessica wouldn't feel threatened by my presence. Turns out, I'd become invisible long before she ever betrayed me. I moved into a small apartment by the river. Sparse. Quiet. One chair. One coffee mug. One bed. People assumed I was lonely. I wasn't. I needed the emptiness, to process, to rebuild, to remember who I'd been before I shrank to fit inside her perfect, poisonous life. Then came the twist. It was a Wednesday. Cloudy. I was having coffee with my old college friend, Drew. We hadn't spoken much over the years. Life drifted us apart. But he'd reached out when he heard, through the grapevine, that I was getting divorced. We talked about surface stuff. Work. The market. Dumb movies. Then his tone shifted. There's something I should probably tell you, he said, not quite meeting my eyes. My stomach sank. He pulled out his phone. Swiped. Turned the screen toward me. Photos. Not of Jessica. Of the other man. The one from the hotel. With Drew. Smiling. Arm around him. They're cousins, Drew said quietly. I didn't know he was involved with Jessica. I only found out after your blow-up went viral. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. And Drew nodded, jaw clenched. They've been planning a business together for years. Jessica used your name to fund it because she couldn't get approved on her own. She told him you knew, said it was your idea, that you were the silent partner. I sat back, every nerve in my body locking up. Drew swallowed. I thought you should know. I didn't say anything earlier because, well, I didn't know if it would make things worse. It mattered. Not just because the betrayal ran deeper than I thought, but because Jessica didn't just cheat on me. She replaced me. She rewrote me. Turned me into a passive investor, a placeholder, a fool in my own story. I walked home in a fog. Poured a drink I didn't finish. Sat on the floor, because the couch felt too civilized for the weight of it. She came back a week later. Knocked on my door. Makeup smudged, eyes hollow. I messed up, she whispered. I ruined everything. No argument there. I thought you'd forgive me. You always forgave me. I looked at her, really looked. Same eyes. Same mouth. But I felt nothing. You thought I'd forgive you because I always did, I said. Not because you were sorry. She started to cry. Maybe for real. Maybe not. Who knows? I need you, she said. I was silent for a long time. Then, no. You need someone like me. But I'm not him anymore. She tried to hug me. I stepped back. And I shut the door. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I sat down and finished my drink. A few days later, I went back to Dr. Patel. I found out I wasn't completely innocent, I said. He raised an eyebrow. How so? I let it happen. I let her talk over me. Lie to me. Walk around me. I saw the red flags and folded anyway. I treated loyalty like a virtue. And now I know. Being a good man doesn't mean being a blind one. That night, I walked down to the river. No music. No distractions. Just me, the cold, and the sound of water. I stood there for hours. No Jessica. No lies. Just the truth. The truth that sometimes new beginnings don't come with a celebration or a love story or a perfect ending. Sometimes they come with silence, with pain, with a slow, messy rebirth. But that's still a beginning. And I'll take that over pretending any day, because I may not have one. But I survived. And survival, in the face of betrayal is its own kind of victory. The end.